The heartbeat of the Life Church is its members. In each episode, you'll hear the stories of people you know, and maybe those you don't. This is the TLC Heartbeat Podcast. Welcome back to the TLC Heartbeat Podcast. I have the wonderful pleasure of introducing my good friend, Trey Moore. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thanks for asking. It was last minute, but...
It happens. Okay, so I know you're going to hate starting off like this, but just go with me. I'm going somewhere with this. Define, for those who don't know video game terminology, define what an Easter egg is.
Oh my gosh. An Easter egg is something that's programmed into the game, but is not included in any release notes. Nobody knows that it's there right off the bat, but it's something that you can discover. This could be like a programmed glitch, or just something that's hidden, like a hidden treasure or something that you go with.
The reason why I asked that is because I view you as basically, I've told this before, a human
video game nerd.
Yeah, well, you're a video game nerd, but you're a human Easter egg. There are many things about you that break the matrix that just don't make sense. But I mean, they're wonderful, but they're just like hidden gems to uncover. I don't want to tell your whole life story. I'll let you do that. But just a few random things that I had no idea. Like you play multiple instruments. Like you play the saxophone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You play keys. You can sing like nobody's business, and you're apparently really good at fishing. You are also super good at like Mario Smash Bros. You have a degree in chemistry. It's just like all of these things that are like, what? Wait, stop! What is happening? How does this make sense? So I wanted to say that because I wanted to ask you, with all these different things you're good at and things you do, like what are the constants? Like what are the things that are Trey through all of it? What is the same as Trey in the chemistry degree as Trey playing the saxophone? What's the constant, Trey?
That's a really good question. So a lot of these things came to be because as a kid, you ask a kid what they want to be when they grow up, and they're like, oh, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be an army man. I wanted to be all of these things. I wanted to be a professional video game player. I wanted to, go to the moon. I wanted to, be a pro fisherman. Those are all things that I wanted to do. I think that comes from me just being really just naturally creative. I've always been artistic, painting, sculpting, anything that I can do with my hands and create something from, whether that's music or art. I think that is probably the constant.
So creation is the
constant. Yes, and whenever
cool.
you think of a creative brain, it's literally you take a bucket of paint and splash it up against a wall. That is my brain, and it's just a big old paint splat. And so it affects everything that I do, and any of the hobbies that I have. I think the creative aspect is the constant.
Okay, so then how does that link to where you're going? Because where are you going? I don't want to tell your story for you. Where are you going? What's your degree in, or the most recent degree? What are you trying to do for the kingdom?
So my most recent completed degree, I have a degree in organizational leadership and a concentration in nonprofit law, which is really interesting. It's basically the Bible college version of a business degree. So as far as where I'm going, I have no idea. I know, I have dreams, certainly. I have desires to be in ministry. I don't think that there's anything more fulfilling to me than serving the kingdom, serving the body. And so about 3 years ago, when I made the decision 4 years ago, when I made the decision to go to Bible school, that just made sense. So and it's the first thing that made as much sense as art, if that we can draw a connection there. So I know that is what I'm supposed to do. However that comes to be, I'm completely open to. Pastor Mann had a small group. Not a small group, but he talked to Thrive a couple of months ago. I think you were involved with that, kind of a very similar thing. You questioned him and his wife. It did a little panel thing in front of the Thrive group. And he mentioned something that I've heard before, but it just stood out to me significantly, is that your ministry, your calling is going to make room for you. But if you fight for it, if you claw your way to it, sure, you might obtain it, but it's not going to be, everything that God wants it to be. Most recently, I started working heavily with life groups. That was the last thing on my agenda, on my mind. But with the degree that I have, the creative mindset that I have, it works.
It makes sense.
It makes sense, yeah. And so I have no idea where I'm going, but I am, giving that to God and trusting that He's going to take me where I need to go.
Well, your gift, just from somebody who has the opportunity to receive ministry from your many gifts, your gifts are definitely making room for themselves.
Thanks, God.
One of the things you didn't mention, though, that I think is a big part, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like pastoral counseling and that kind of stuff. Like,
yeah.
So how does that link into, I guess what I'm trying to get at with all of this is, what is your passion? What is your heartbeat, to be cheesy? Like,
I think it's suiting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think late last year, mid last year, I was kind of wrestling with this, like, where am I going? What am I doing? And so I started just doing some practical research, like surfing on the internet, talking with friends, your wife, who's a counselor, and the idea hit me, and other mentors as well that I was talking to, and something that they all, pointed out was like, I'm good with people. I like people, and I truly do. I don't know why I say this all the time, and don't think about it too hard because you can hurt yourself. But I fall in love with people like super easy.
Yeah.
I just like the second I meet people, I'm like, oh, I love that person.
Yeah.
Like I can't help myself. And something that they pointed out was that Trey would work well in counseling, and so I started to explore that, and it's another thing that really made sense. I applied, to several, master's programs, literally like copy and pasting your wife's degree, and like trying to figure out, if that's something that was suitable for me. And I fell in love with the idea. I don't know if that's going to happen. It certainly was. I was like 6 months ago, if you would have asked me if that's what I was going to do, absolutely. I think that it's an admirable thing to do. But there are several factors that play into that. Money, time. I've had a lot of health complications that kind of put a lot of things on hold. So I don't know. I would love to do that. I think the church needs licensed counselors, and I think that that's something that I could do, and I would be so fulfilled doing.
I pray that if that is God's will, that He empowers you and blesses you to be able to continue and finish that journey. So I want to ask you a question, though, about degrees specifically. We were talking yesterday, I believe, and you said that, one of the main things that you get from degrees is just the character building part of it. Like the actual information is sometimes harder to retain. That surprises me from somebody who has, in my opinion, an accomplished, resume when it comes to degrees. You've got 3 of them, like or
2.5.
you almost got your 3rd. Like that surprises me. So like in your mind, what is the role of academia in your Christian walk? Is it for the character stuff, or like what is the role of the academia for you?
I really think again it boils down to personality traits. So for me specifically, I've been a Gold Star student since day one. I've never really had to try. People say like, oh, he's good with books or whatever, or they're good with books. I honestly just test well. Like I sit down and I may never have read the textbook once, but like I perform well on tests. So I think
give him a Scantron and he's
I'm good to go. I wish, but I don't know. All through high school, I never really, had to try. I did very well, and then I think because of that, and the fact that I'm so creative, I never. Sure, I retained stuff like the concepts and principles, stuck with me, even through all of my degrees. chemistry I haven't touched since I graduated, but like specifically, organizational leadership, there are things that I remember being lectured about that, like right now, I couldn't tell you, but in a moment, whenever I'm, working with a life group leader, or I'm conducting a meeting with my team, I have a team of 5 coaches, and whenever I'm conducting a meeting, I'm like it hits me, and I'm like, oh, like, okay, this is something that I learned in, oh well, I can't tell you when, can't tell you who taught it to me, but like, I know this stuff. So there's a lot of that swimming around in here, but I think that the key takeaway from education is truly building character, building somebody, in my case, that hopefully can be an instrument that's well equipped and can be used by God. My mom also is just a student by nature. She's a student of the Word, and has gone to school multiple times. And her motto, I think a lot of people hold on to this, is never stop learning. So I think that's also something that I try to pull from my degrees. I don't think I'll ever be satisfied or feel completed, because there's more to do.
That's cool. I want to follow this up then.
Sure.
We have a connection to school in a way,
Yeah.
because you went to Urshan College, and that college is located in St. Louis, where I grew up, and so we know a lot of the same people. I actually attended Urshan College briefly, and so we've crossed paths a couple times in our life before we both came here to the Life Church, and I was in Dr. Jared Runk's class. It was Theology 1, or it was something super,
awesome.
super intro course. And he had a quote, I forget who he was quoting, but he said, "The real theologian is the one who prays." Have you ever heard that quote?
Yeah, I've heard it from him.
Okay, yeah, and that really stuck with me. And as somebody who approaches God, I would say, more analytically, or desires to approach spirituality from more of an academic lens, that it just really hit home with me. And since academics are a big part of your life, like, what do you think about that statement? How is that statement? How does that port into your life? How does that apply to you? Like, what do you think?
I think the identity of a Christian, a lot of stuff plays into that. Spiritual discipline is one of those. To be Christian is to be Christ-like, and of course, to be like somebody, to model after somebody. I feel like there has to be a relationship there. Brother Runker, Jared, also has another quote that he throws around from time to time, that like us as individuals are a combination of the 5 people that are closest to us. And we're an example, or like we take bits of people that we like, and we form that, and that's what builds us. That's what builds our character and our personality. And that's something that really stuck out to me as well, because if we are to be Christ-like, Christ has to be in that mix. And I'm not at all trying to connect that, biblically. I haven't really looked into that, but I'm just saying, to be Christ-like, we have to have a relationship with him. Of course, I know this is really surface level, but you can't be like somebody. You and I would not be able to give and take, or take bits from each other to better ourselves, or to better each other, if we didn't sit down and have conversations. And so when he says the real theologian is the one that prays, I think praying, talking to God will naturally get us closer to him, because we're going to be able to understand what makes him happy, what makes him sad, what pleases him, and what makes him proud. And knowing those things will in turn make us like him, and make us understand, teach others, and help bring them to that close relationship with God as well.
So, not to be crude, but like, I guess you could think of it as, instead of trying to know somebody and pretending like they're a lifeless cadaver that you're dissecting, like, this is a person you can interact with. Like, you don't study them by dissecting them necessarily. You study them by having a relationship with them, and you can read about them, but nothing changes that connection, that the kind of real connection that is transformative. But speaking of transforming, I wanted to ask you a question. This is kind of a perfect segue. Tell me about people in your life that excite you, people in your life that have formed you into who you are. And then the question on the heels of that would be, tell me about a key moment with God as one of those people that has especially formed you into who you are today.
Yeah. There are way too many to count. So I think we'll start with something that's relative to everybody who will be listening. But whenever I moved here, I started attending the Life Church in 2015. The first person that I met was Pastor Mann. He was standing at the front door. He knew I was coming, and I sent him an email. And he just made such an impact because he was so intentional. I was young, I was stupid, and he knew all of that. Could see right through it, any mask that I put up, and he really, really made an impact. And I'm not just saying that because he's my pastor, but there was an intentionality there, and I think that was. I don't think things happen for a reason, and I ended up here. I think God orchestrated all of that. Stemming down from that, I have a lot of mentors that have come from the Life Church in my time here. So, Chase and Autumn Potter, they are people who, again, were just very intentional. I don't know, they left a couple years ago and moved to New York. I miss them immensely, but they're great and still have a significant role, a significant voice in my life. I think there are so many more, and I think those people know who they are. You and your wife, Clayton and Jordan, Connor, Breely, Kristen, like all of these people, Luke and Kayla, like those are people that I truly look up to and have left a thumbprint in my life. But when I ran away to Bible college, that was a little bit of a drier time, and I'm answering the second part of your question here, but a little bit of a drier time as far as like mentors. I definitely had them and had really good friends, but they were more friend tours. We were all the same age, all in the same stage of life,
The blind leading the blind.
Yeah, literally, and oh gosh, it was a wreck at times. So, but there was one day specifically, this individual, Jeannie Bland, Dr. Jeannie Bland, she is a rock star. And again, this is just one of many professors and people that have stood out to me. She preached a chapel message. Every Thursday we had a chapel service for the student body, and she preached a message, Blessed are the unoffended. And at that time, I was really struggling that the whole concept of this is John the Baptist dedicated his life to Jesus Christ, paving the way, for his coming, and was imprisoned. And while he was in prison, he asked his disciples, John also had disciples, and he asked his disciples, go find Christ, ask him, if the blind can see, if the lame can walk, whatever, and then come back and tell me. And so his disciples left, went to find Jesus, and Jesus said, like, yes, all these things are done, but you don't get to participate in them. Like, sorry you haven't seen them, and blessed is he who's not offended because of me. So basically saying, if God gives you a non-answer, we have the choice to be offended or to accept that. And I think at that time I was really, really struggling with the things in my world. I didn't fully understand, things that were happening. And so that message really hit home. But after that, there was just an incredible God moment. I had a professor, Cullen Crestman, again, we're not super close, but he was just so intentional with any interaction that we had. And he got up at the end and basically was like, hey, everybody find a friend and speak over them. Speak, allow the Lord to use you and speak over them. And I was kind of standing by myself, and he was like, and Trey, you don't have a friend, so I'm going to come talk to you. And and he did, and spoke some things that were very, very accurate. And I could tell that was a moment of God using the body, using people to show me that he sees where I am. He acknowledged exactly, where I am, and it transformed me. But I had a paradigm shift. I immediately saw things differently, and it was purely because of other people. It was purely because those people who excite me. That I fall in love with, who were listening to the voice of God and obeyed.
Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
One of the questions I was going to ask you, and I feel like every question I have planned, you've like perfectly segue into.
Good.
I was going to ask you, like which Bible stories or Bible characters do you resonate the most with? But from your answer, it sounds like John the Baptist.
Yes, if anybody asks me that is my answer, purely because of that story.
Wow.
There's also a book, Prisoner in the Third Cell by Gene Edwards. It's a powerful book. So anybody listening, please get that. It's on Amazon. It's like $7. It's a very easy read too, but it's a beautiful book that talks about this story. And again, if you're struggling with accepting things that God is performing in your life or not performing in your life, or answers that you're getting, this is a book that's really it's good for the mind. And so I would say John the Baptist, but yeah, also Gene Edwards' book. It's great.
That is the story of John the Baptist. Like, I don't know, that's a heavy story. Like, to be full of faith, to know that God's put his hand on your life. Like, you're not doubting what you're supposed to be doing. In the case of John the Baptist, the Spirit has been on him since he was in the womb. But yeah. To feel God's hand on you, to speak of this coming Messiah, to speak of the Christ who is coming, who is able to do all these things, and yet your story is you're in a cell and eventually you lose your head. And Christ's answer is, I'm doing all these things, and for whatever reason, like, that's not the card I want to put in your hand. Instantly confusion is what comes to my mind. It's just like, how does that make any sense?
What's so cool about the story of John the Baptist, though, is I can absolutely assure you, that he had those questions. Mm-hmm. I'm almost positive he was frustrated, right? Like, whenever Christ sent John's disciples back to him with a non-answer, blessed is he who's not offended because of me. Like, what does that even mean? Of course I'm going to be offended. But we personally, you and I have kind of talked about this before, but choosing to do what's right and acknowledging that if I choose to accept what God is doing and go with it, there's a blessing at the end of that. And we can look at the story of John the Baptist and say this, but the moment his head was rolled off onto the ground, and he took that step into eternity, I promise you that hit him. He realized and would do everything exactly the same and would be okay with. Like, I promise you, because that's that blessing, whether he recognized it in his human form or not. I know that he would do it again because it's worth it, right? That blessing is so much better than we can even imagine, and it's easier said than done. I know, because life can be traumatic, life can be hard, and frustrating. But I think all of that, just start to finish, the story of John the Baptist, I resonate with so much, and I think it also gives me hope, right? It gives me hope.
Well, speaking of hope, another one of the three things that remain is faith, hope, love.
Yeah.
I was just thinking as you were talking, like, the greatest miracle of all, as cheesy as it may sound, couldn't you argue it's the salvation of the soul? It's the redemption of a corrupted human heart that is twisted and full of addiction and chaos and all things that are anti-Christ, and the transforming of that heart into a tender, responsive heart, as Ezekiel says. And then the thought that heart could belong to a person who is doomed to die, like everyone is, but yet by some miracle there's a resurrection, and like eternal life is given to that once former sinner who's been made clean. Like that to me is like, you mean I can be transformed, and you mean I can live forever with Christ? Like, what are you talking about? That's insane. And those things happen. Salvation happens through faith, and so maybe you could argue that by not delivering John the Baptist, by giving him a non-answer, by giving him something that he wasn't demanding in the moment, Jesus is actually giving John the Baptist an opportunity to exercise his faith And that faith is the thing he's going to need for the next moment as he steps into his eternal blessing. Is that fair? Or
absolutely. Faith that can be tested is faith that can be trusted.
And faith that can be blessed and rewarded eternally.
Absolutely. And, I think we can wrestle with that because the test is not easy. Being in prison is not easy, especially for doing God's bidding. You'd be like these things are right, these things are good, I've committed my life to this, yet I'm locked in prison, and this can apply to us, personally. When we are attempting to do all things the right way, but we feel stuck, or just things are not working out, although we're making what we feel like are all the right decisions, and we're seeking after the Lord, and there's just that one wall that seems to just keep building itself, or like the bricks just get higher and higher while we're trying to tear it down to get closer. I think all of that can come into play, and if we can trust the process and just faithfully believe that God is working all things for good, that's something that God can rely on, and I think that's something that He can, stealing something from you, that He can be proud of, and in that there's reward. I don't think, again, that's not saying like do good, but and then you'll be rewarded with heaven. That's a whole different conversation, but I think that God honors that, and stealing a quote from Pastor, faith that can be tested is faith that can be trusted.
I think that's a good note to begin to wrap this up on.
Sure.
I appreciate you sharing your story, your heartbeat, your insights. As one person in your life who loves you, please don't stop creating. Even if your ministry of creation feels like John the Baptist sometimes, it is very much appreciated. Your creativity, your passion, your love for me and my family, and your insight, just all the things that you are, has been very much a blessing to me, and I'm so grateful you get to be a part of my church family.
Awesome. Absolutely. Nathan, you guys have equally been a blessing to me. For anyone out there who's also creative, I am a professional doodler, and
it's true.
You can too. So don't give up. Keep pressing, even if it doesn't make sense. It was really good to share this with you, and to have you. I think it's good to think, and your questions were great.
You're awesome.
Love you, dude.
Love you. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the TLC Heartbeat Podcast. The vision of this podcast is to tell the stories of the Life Church members. If there's anyone whose story you want to hear, please reach out and let us know. You can find us online at tlcdallas.com or on Facebook at The Life Church Dallas. Thank you for watching and listening.